Welcome, everyone, to this panel discussion on privacy by design, where I'll be speaking to my panelists from the Lumery about compliance and the competitive advantage it offers businesses amidst the evolving privacy landscape. Now, the Lumery is a leading MarTech consultancy based out of Australia and is a long-standing partner of ours in the region. I am the Director of Customer Success for Tealium, and I'm joined by Rajan Kumar, the co-founder and CEO of the Lumery, and their head of solution architecture, Kevin Nugugoda. So I'll just quickly hand over to my panelist, Raj, to say a quick hello.
Hi, Kintu, and hello to everyone tuning in. Yeah, really excited to dive into this topic, which I know is a big priority for lots of businesses and lots of leaders out there.
Okay, with that, Kevin, would you like to quickly say hello as well?
Yep. Thank you, Kintu, and hello to everyone watching digitally as well. Looking forward to having this discussion today and hopefully giving you some insight into what we do at the Lumery and some of the features of Tealium.
Great. Lovely to have you, Kevin and Raj, join us today. With that, let's jump right in. Let me just make sure I'm on the right screen. There we go. So for our first question, a recent McKinsey article identified that companies achieve 20% of their earnings before interest and taxes from data-driven artificial intelligence. Now, what do you believe this portends for the organization of the future? Raj, would you like to go first, or is that you, Kevin?
Kev, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I might jump in here. So look, AI and ML have been around in some form within our industry for quite some time. And obviously the prevalence of it is increasing quite a lot and the landscape is changing a lot. The more traditional uses of the technology have been for things like optimizing content and audience targeting and ad spend optimization and even reporting insights. But with the move towards these generative AIs and the evolution of AI as it's going to come in the future, something that we're going to have to accept is that AI is here to stay. People are going to use it. And we need to start thinking about how we're going to use it. Because at the end of the day, these are external platforms that our customers, our staff are interacting with on a regular basis. And we need to think about what data they're entering into those platforms. Is it sensitive? Is it giving away any corporate secrets? Is it in line with our customer expectations of how we manage data and our businesses in general? That's not to say they shouldn't be used, because I'm old enough to remember in primary school that computers were discouraged from use, and pen and paper was the preferred method of submitting all of your assignments. I'm thankful that has changed because my writing is terrible. And it's just something that we're going to have to accept. It's the next evolution of technology that businesses can rely on and people should rely on to augment their own abilities. It's not going to replace our abilities. ChatGPT at the moment is well known for telling untruths, shall we say, and not getting the facts correct. But that's not to say that it's not hugely useful to our everyday lives and our corporate lives as well.
Yeah, I think, what Kev kind of talks to in regards to acceptance and not being frightened and scared of this technology advancement, but actually thinking about it as an opportunity is what organizations need to kind of really wrap their heads around. Even from the education example, right? I was sitting with some universities a few months ago, and they very quickly shifted from let's ban ChatGPT from our students using it through to, okay, well, it's here to stay. Let's accept that fact. And we've got to rethink how we assess students now. What questions are we really asking them if they have access to a tool like this to fulfill what previously would have been fairly manual research and kind of content writing? So I think that idea of acceptance and then figuring out where the opportunities really lie is where leading organizations will go. I think that the citing of the EBIT increase of 20% from data-driven AI, you could probably look at the last 10 to 15 years and cite many examples that say, if you're data-driven, you will see this impact on your business. And I think that's fairly accurate, right? The more you use data, the more that you're more rigorous with using that within your decision-making, it will lead to better decisions and therefore better commercial and financial performance. So that's true. And now with AI and the rise of generative AI and the application of AI within things like marketing, advertising, and so forth, then yes, we should be seeing greater commercial improvements, right? That's exactly what we should be seeing. But it is going to require organizations to think about the opportunities that AI presents them. And that's all the way from perhaps taking away manual tasks that were previously done by people and moving them to far more strategic focuses, so that the tools can take some of that manual effort away. But also it might be pointing out things that perhaps us as humans are missing, right? The AI and ML technology will be able to pick up things that perhaps humans are not. So yeah, I think it's all about acceptance and looking for opportunities. That's where these organizations, or every organization, should be focusing their time and energy, not thinking about it as a huge risk.
Yeah, and some really good points that both you and Kevin raised here. Just thinking about how I use ChatGPT in my own day-to-day life, it has made finding formulas to crunch data much easier So that's really one key useful way I use it. Right. Some really good points from you, Raj and Kev, on that question. I think, we're all keen to hear what are really the defining characteristics of a future-ready, privacy-enabled enterprise. Raj, would you like to go first with this one?
Yeah, this is a topic that I think is probably being discussed at nearly every boardroom, especially across Australia, but within the region, right? Given some of the legislation changes that we're about to experience in this country, and probably the most significant changes since the kind of Privacy Act a number of years ago. So if we kind of accept that privacy now needs to be at the core of how organizations are thinking, we talked a lot about, especially in our industry, putting customer at the core, and that's true. But customers, consumers, everyday people, you and I, now expect our data to be secure and handled in a way that puts privacy at the forefront. And so therefore, organizations must move towards ensuring that their decision-making, their strategies, their investments are putting privacy at the highest possible level when it comes to their decision making and their agenda items and how they're thinking about their strategies. So that's got to go all the way from the C-level when it comes to investment planning and strategic planning, down to enablement and training of every single person in the organization that touches customer data. This is no longer something that can live within a particular team or a particular part of the organization. Data is it's prevalent across the enterprise, right? Everyone has access to customer data. And by everyone, I mean all the different departments and people that need to touch it, access it, use it for delivering experiences or communicating with customers or delivering a service, whatever it might be. There is probably no single part of the enterprise that doesn't require customer data. So if we're now moving into a world where privacy is really at a point where it's expected to be treated with the utmost importance by us as consumers and customers, then organizations need to really build themselves around that fact, right? I know, Kevin, you're doing a lot of work with organizations on wrapping their heads around this, right? Bringing together cross-functional groups and thinking about how to solve this. Do you want to maybe add to that?
Yeah, I think all great points. And, we have engaged with lots of enterprise clients about reviewing what does privacy mean to them, and what are some of those exposure points, not just from that traditional security aspect of securing data in transit, at rest, in applications, in websites, and all of those sorts of things. But nowadays, a lot of companies outsource different parts of their business as well, whether it's their call center, whether it's a delivery partner. And, you know, a lot of the time, personal information is required to be sent outside of the traditional organization, but it still needs to be secured, and the privacy policies need to be adhered. And I think this is an area where a lot of companies are not necessarily thinking more broadly about. And it really comes back to, you know, defining what the goals are first. What does it mean for your organization? Both looking at it from that customer lens that Raj was talking about. How would you want your data to be treated and shared and used? But then the compliance aspect and regulatory requirements that are, you know, encompassing data usage these days and collection, and also retention. You know, there are a lot of services that we all use that require us to share a lot of very personal information beyond first name, last name, and even beyond our street address, to be able to sign up for some of these services. And I, for one, feel a little bit nervous with some of the companies that I share that information with. So I think just looking at it through that privacy first lens, and, you know, as Raj said, looking at who has access to that data. Often we just see data being sent to different systems and different departments because it's part of the existing file. Even though, for example, an analytics team doesn't need to know any personal information, they just need an identifier, usually a customer ID or membership ID, etc. They don't need to know any other details about the customer specifically around their personal information. And so the question is, why would you share it? It's an exposure point. It's an area where it's easier, or has been easier, to leave the data in there because it's part of an existing platform or file. But nowadays we need to control that distribution of that data to only the people and systems that require it.
Right. On that note, we've had some recent changes in Australia, especially. So the release of the Attorney General's Privacy Act review report, especially signals a seismic shift in basically the Australian government's approach to privacy regulation. Now, what would you, Raj, consider are the three steps any organization should take to prepare for the forthcoming reforms to the Privacy Act 1988?
Yeah, so I think we've got the set of recommendations, right, from the Attorney General, and they've been published for quite some time now, and they're going for a review. I was fortunate enough to sit in a forum with the Attorney General, amongst other technology companies, to hear directly on some of the government's views and thoughts, but also for the government to take feedback from industry, which is great. I think one of the first things that every organisation should do is ensure that someone within the organisation and some team has read the actual report. I think there's a blind view that Australia is going to copy GDPR kind of verbatim, which is not the case. There's a lot of learnings that come out of GDPR. There is a view of interoperability, right, ensuring that Australian legislation can coexist in a really efficient and effective way with global standards, which is a tick from industry. I think we would all accept that. But there are things, for example, consent pop-ups, which we know are not leading to the exact behaviour and data collection methods that we would like, right? So the legislation that is being recommended here and is being discussed is not exactly as per what we see in Europe. So I think any organisation that is starting to really understand what's coming down the pipeline needs to ensure that there's parts of their organisation that are really well briefed, right, really well informed about what the recommendations are, and they're staying on top of how that is changing until it comes into play officially. Back to Kevin's point about education, part of that is also ensuring that team or those individuals are relaying that out to the organisation so that the marketing team can start building towards what the legislation is going to expect of them. And so we're not waiting for, this big bang moment where the legislation is passed and now we all rush to change, our collection methods or our storage methods. we need to be building now. If any brand isn't working on ensuring that they're leveling up their collection, storage, destruction processes, et cetera, they really need to be. They need to be in line with what some of this legislation is going to be asking them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It almost conflicts with the old school disaster recovery model. Every business needs to take backups of their data so that they can recover from IT failure that often occurs, hopefully not too often. But that means then that customer data may be stored in backups that are stored, in some cases almost forever in external systems or on tapes or various, hopefully no one's using tapes anymore. Or various other platforms that are connected to the ecosystem of the company. So being able to adhere to that data deletion request and put in place sensible retention policies for data. We've seen some examples where, identity documents like, government issued identity documents, scanned versions of them, photocopied versions of them have been stored for customers that are no longer customers. And, that should be a no-brainer. And to Rajan's point, the organizations typically led by some sort of data council or data governance team need to ask those questions of their own organizations to ensure that they understand what their risk profile looks like, and they have some strategies in place to adhere to the policies when they come in.
So, as a leading MarTech consultancy, how is the Lumery supporting its clients to bridge this gap between data and technology to build consumer trust? Kevin, would you want to go first?
Yeah, I think, this is an area where AI could probably assist in the near future. Taking your example there about government issued documents, what's the purpose of that? The purpose is to identify you. So there's very, very valid reasons for that. Some organizations have other legislated requirements to confirm your identity before you can use their services, but they don't need to be stored long term. They could be issued or scanned. They could be, paired with a video call or a photo through the website or app, etc. That's used for verification purposes and then destroyed because they're no longer required to be retained after that. Now, those types of technologies, I've seen them already. They're around in various forms, but it comes back to the risk analysis first. What do you need to do as a business to ensure the identity of your customers? And that's important, as I said, for many businesses. But then also, what retention policies would you put in place for that data? Once you confirm the identity, and similarly back to that point of deletion, being able to delete all data about a person is now absolutely paramount.
So on that front, moving on to the next question, Forrester's Total Economic Impact Report basically revealed that Tealium CDP users can achieve an ROI of about 365% and $6.9 million in revenue or benefits over a 3-year period. So how important is privacy compliance to accelerating the value of CDP adoption? Raj, I think you're going first with this one.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting, right? So yeah, we've got countless examples of customers implementing Tealium and seeing positive ROI, right? Business cases being justified relatively quickly through delivering customer experiences, delivering high levels of personalization, delivering use cases that perhaps haven't been able to be delivered before. I do think the the opportunity for organizations to leverage Tealium and CDP technology specifically with a privacy lens is going to be a huge focus moving forward. It has been, but it's almost as if it could be the single reason why you're investing in CDP. I think we've seen CDP spoken about a lot when it comes to marketing activation. And of course it generates, it can generate revenue from that standpoint. But just as much as it can generate revenue, it can reduce risk. It can increase compliance. It can deliver your privacy strategy. And I think that's going to be a real key focus moving forward. And it needs to be, right? I think this is the sort of technology that can support some of these strategies accelerate. So the question of how important is privacy compliance to CDP adoption, it's almost as if, CDP adoption can accelerate privacy compliance, because privacy is binary. It's not an option. You can't not be compliant. That will not be acceptable. Your customers will not accept it. From a legal standpoint, legislative standpoint, it will not be accepted. You must be compliant. So how do you accelerate towards a state where you are compliant and you're more proactive when it comes to these matters versus reactive? Well, probably investing in people and process 100%, but also tools and technology that are going to advance your practices much further, right? And Kevin is, well versed in kind of some of the stuff that Tealium can provide and has been providing to a lot of our customers. Kevin, you could probably chime in on that.
Yeah, look, consent management has been built into Tealium for quite some time, and it's great to see a new feature released recently that allows for third-party consent platforms to be integrated with Tealium as well, because as we all know, the technology landscape is pretty big, and organizations will choose different platforms for different reasons. Sometimes those platforms are mandated from a parent organization or have been in place for a long time, and they're happy with them. And so being able to integrate platforms as required, like this for purpose-built features and functions is really useful. And it helps that adoption and implementation phase of the privacy policies that you put in place. It's been interesting looking at the local landscape, that not that many companies have been using those features today because they haven't been required to. And so there's a lot of work to do in a lot of organizations across the region to go through that process of risk analysis and planning for what needs to be done, and then the implementation phase. And really, the longer you leave all of that, the more costly it will be, whether it's in the human costs of the people required to help implement those changes, or the standing up of platforms that you may not even have today to help with your privacy requirements, and the actual implementation of that across the organization stack.
Yeah, really key points again that both of you raised, and it's a key topic that my team is always fielding questions on: consent integrations and how can Tealium support our customers with it. So on that note, I'll move to the next question. Otherwise, I think we'll run out of time. So could you please share a case study that basically illustrates how the Lumery has embedded privacy by design principles within a client's data governance framework?
Yeah, one that comes to mind was actually a project we did a couple of years ago now, from memory. It was for a large real estate organization, and going into that sort of workshop phase of talking about data governance in general, I asked the question of how well do you guys do data governance? And there was a resounding tick of success. Yeah, we do it really well. We've already got a data council. We've got very good security practices, and everything's good. And I challenged them a little bit on that. I said, what is data governance? Because it used to be just about that traditional security of data, preventing hackers from getting in, preventing breaches, those sorts of things. But nowadays, I challenge the quality of your data. how good is or how useful is bad data to your organization if multiple systems are not kept in sync with changes to data points about a customer. You'll be sending the wrong information. You might breach a spam compliance requirement, various other legislative issues, but also functional issues. You're going to have a bad experience for the customer, and that's traditionally that would be part of a QA team, quality assurance. And what we see is QA is typically more about user interface and features and functions, and does the app work correctly, and does the website work correctly. But the quality of data needs to be tested with the same amount of rigor, and that's where platforms like a CDP can help with that orchestration of the data between systems in real time, while putting in place data quality rules to ensure that the data you're collecting and distributing is accurate, it conforms to the specifications that your data team have said it needs to, plus also being able to restrict which platforms that data gets sent to at an attribute level. So, the example before about, not needing to send personal information to the reporting and analytics stack, as an example, means that we can suppress, obfuscate, redact that information if required, while still enabling that team to do their core function. And along with that, privacy, as we've been talking about here today, is another element, in my opinion, of a good data governance framework. And I think we've raised a number of good points around that. And I think now it's just a question of getting that your teams rallied around those goals to ensure that you have the people, process, tech, and data, to support that. And a couple of other things like ethics is not necessarily talked about quite so much, but it's certainly one that end users or customers are starting to be more vocal about. There's a lot of bad PR that comes out with data breaches and unethical use of data collection and categorization of people, for want of a better term. And so I think that's where orgs need to think about, what do we want to, what do we want our customers to think of us, and how we use their data. And that's where I think the ethics committee, or at least people thinking about ethics within the organization and the use of data, is also paramount. The last point is around auditing. Once you put all these rules in place and you have these policies, etc., how do you know you're being compliant? How do you know that the right data is getting to the right platform in the right order? Those sorts of things. And that's again where it's not a single team necessarily, or a single tool that will do it all for you. It needs to be looked at across the organization to ensure that the quality of data is accurate, the distribution of that data is accurate, and it's compliant with that particular customer's preferences.
Yeah, I think privacy by design, and there's probably a lot of people listening to this now who are wondering, what does that even mean? And what is privacy by design, right? And effectively, the idea of putting privacy within the decision-making frameworks as you're rolling out new investments, new initiatives, new programs, and you're thinking about privacy, right? You're really thinking about data and the collection of data, destruction of data, ensuring there's only a minimum amount of data collected, and so forth. So I almost think about it as some a bit of a maturity curve that a lot of organizations will go on, right? The first one is really, look, as you're running new programs of work, where is privacy in the discussion, in the planning, and ensuring it's done as early as possible? You're not waiting to the end. You're not waiting to the release of your CDP to think about privacy. You're hopefully planning for that up front. And so that's going to require someone in that team to be well versed with everything that is required to be compliant, whether it's a privacy officer, whether that's digital team. In our world, our solution architect team, so Kev's team, they do bring a lot of that thinking into the planning processes of technology implementation. So that's key, right? But that really feels like level 1 or level 2 of what organizations should be doing when it comes to privacy by design. I think the next level of maturity where it's going to go is there's culturally a change that the whole organization is thinking about privacy in the same way that we talk about human-centered design or customer experience, right? Privacy is really a cultural element. And so therefore it's embedded in training and enablement. It's talked about, at the same level of awareness as perhaps other elements are that it isn't today. So it's thinking about culturally, how is the organization going to start adopting privacy? And there's a number of principles that come with privacy by design. How does that get taken into account and into how the organization works day in, day out? That's the kind of maturity curve that I think organizations will need to go on. But as a starting point, right, significant projects ensure privacy is being considered really early within your planning processes.
Such good points again. Sorry, Raj, I think you were going to add something else on.
No, that's fine.
Okay, all right. No, I was just thinking, we also just recently had another customer who we worked with on this, who saw about a 200% increase in their consenting customer base when they leveraged the privacy by design principles, right? And this was when they were rolling out their personalization engine. So a lot of the points that Kevin touched on earlier about, incorporating and starting early with this process and making that data readily accessible and actionable, speeding up operations, all of that kind of helped them to see that kind of result. So there is a lot of value in incorporating privacy by design principles much early on versus being in that reactive stage that we now find ourselves mostly. So good points there. With that, that brings us to the end of this panel discussion, and we hope our audience has found this very insightful. Thank you to our panelists for sharing their experience, their learnings in the industry, and to our audience for your time today. If you're interested to hear more and learn more about this, please reach out to us at Tealium and also to the Lumery. We're happy to also put you in touch with them. So thank you everyone for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kinzu. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, team.
Right. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.